whole lot of loving is what we'll be bringing. We'll make you happy.
Hello, my friends. It's been a year since last I did a video. I'm so happy to see you. So much has happened in the last year. Most of it really good for me. In fact, I just finished my best year ever, my 50th year in the classroom last month, and it was my best year of all 50. So this video today is going to be in two parts, and part two will be telling you all about my last year and what made it so amazing. But part one is just all about this journey of 50 years, where it began, this journey of the last 50 years. And I'm going to tell you a few stories and take you down a road that has led to a very difficult time of being in a public school, in a government school. And I'm going to show you, the purpose of this video is to eradicate the words social emotional learning, or SEL, completely from any video I ever do in the future. I'll explain that a little bit from now, but that's where we're headed. Is that I'm reestablishing a total commitment to character education versus social emotional learning, which has a very bad name now. So we'll talk about that as the video continues here. But so I've been really thinking about how do I even tell you what's happened in the last 50 years in one short video. It's impossible, of course, but I'm going to give it a try to give you a general overview of where I started 50 years ago and where I ended up 50 years later. So that first year, 1973, my first classroom, there was no such thing as ADHD. At least we hadn't diagnosed it, and none of my students were on medicine, and we didn't know what autism was, if there was such a thing. And it was smooth waters. It was easy going. Thank goodness, thank God, because I didn't know what I was doing. But I was so young, and I'll never forget that first back to school night. Mr. Correa, Ricky and Laura's dad, came in, and he said, I was there by myself. He was the first one to come to back to school night. I was so nervous. And he walked in and he said, where's the teacher? And I said, I'm the teacher. And he said, you can't be the teacher. Where's the teacher? And I went home and cried my eyes out. So I was young and ignorant and very innocent. But my students raised their hands and they said, yes, ma'am, and they did their homework, and it was happy. And so we had a baby, and we moved to a different city, and I was in a different school for a couple different schools, and things were still really good until about 45 years ago. So the first 5 years were happy. But about 45 years ago, I transferred into a school that said, I caught two kids cheating. They had completely copied term papers, word for word, from the encyclopedia, and I'd put F's on both of their papers. So the principal called me in and said, he had the term papers with the F's on them, and he said, we don't give F's in this school. And I was like, what? Do you see that they cheated? And he said, we know they cheated, but F's aren't good for students' self-esteem. It was the beginning of the self-esteem movement. So I went home that night and wrote a resignation letter that night, and I resigned from that school. Then I went to my next school. I got hired everywhere I interviewed. I always got hired. In my next school, I had started a Friday curriculum that I called Success Motivation, and every Friday I took time to talk about the truth, and we read poetry that was all about what makes a person great. It was character education is what it was. I didn't name it that in those days, but I called it Success Motivation. And one day the principal came in. This was after I'd been at this school for just a couple months. Principal called me in and said, "Would you come to a meeting after school today at 4 o'clock?" And I said, "Sure." And so I walked into the library at 4 o'clock, and every teacher and the principal was in the library, and there was one empty chair for me. So I sat down. I knew, boy, this is not going to be good. So a teacher said, started it off, said, "Can you tell us about success motivation?" And I said, well, I explained that we do it on Friday, and that it's about teaching students to make wise choices, and that it's all about how to be successful. And he said, "Do you teach right and wrong? Do you teach right and wrong in success motivation lessons?" And I said, "Well, of course I do." And basically he was the ringleader. He came right out and said, "Well, at this school, we don't teach right and wrong." This really happened. This really happened to me. I said, "Are you telling me that if you know a student in your class is doing drugs, for example, that you're not going to talk to him about it? You're not going to call the parents? You're not going to intercede in any way?" And he said, "We believe that students have the right to decide for themselves what is right and what is wrong." That really happened to me. I got into my car that day, and I fell on my steering wheel, and I knew we are on the wrong track. And I resigned from that school the next day. This is about 45 years ago. The next school that I went to, I don't even want to tell you that story. I'm just gonna glide over that story. 3 schools where I stood for the truth. I stood and I fought, and I said, I will not be in a school that believes this. And so soon after that 3rd school, I interviewed with a principal who, there were 260 teachers that had applied for this particular job. I found out later, 260 applicants. We had a fabulous interview, he and I, this principal. And I got in the car and I thought, boy, that was really good, but he did not ask me why I left my last 3 jobs. So the next day the phone rang, and it was the principal, and he said, "I'd just like you to come in today, and I have one more question for you." So I went in, and of course it was, "Why did you leave your last 3 jobs?" And I had decided that I was going to absolutely, if I had the opportunity, to tell him the story without naming schools, without pointing fingers, without, throwing people under the bus. I was going to tell him what happened. And so he listened to my 3 stories, and he looked at me and smiled and said, "You're hired, and I want you to know that you can teach right and wrong in my school." So I stayed in that school for 30 years. And during those 30 years, there were some really hard times, because things were changing dramatically in the wrong direction. And I can't go into all of that. I can just tell you here today that I got in hot water several times. If you just say the word God, and a student goes home and says, "Our teacher's talking about God," you get in trouble. You get called in. And so God was with me during those 30 years. He was protecting me, and it's a miracle I never got fired, actually, because I often said things that we were not supposed to say. So after I retired from that school, I've been in several schools since, and they've all been wonderful. I've been teaching what I called social emotional learning. I've been teaching character education. Somewhere along the line, I started calling it social emotional learning. And I don't know when that happened. There's no story behind that. But the story today is that social emotional learning has a very bad name. And if you're really paying attention to the news, and you really know what's going on, this whole thing with public schools and the transformations, the radical transformations in public schools started 100 years ago. It was a plan. There's a plan to take down America and replace it with socialism, communism, fascism. It's all true. And it's being taught in the government schools today. And so this morning, I woke up before I opened my eyes with the words, free at last, thank God Almighty, I am free at last. I just bounded out of the bed because what it said to me is, use that today in the video. That's expressing where you are right now in your journey. This educational journey is not over. Happy day. 50 years in government schools, persevering, standing up, speaking the truth, and yet not being able to really speak the whole truth. I am finally free, and I will be starting next month in a private Christian school, and I am so excited. I feel like I am just ready to explode with the curriculum that I can share the full truth that I can share in this school. And so I've spent the last month creating these fabulous new posters for my new classroom, and I want to share some of those with you today. And I want to show you a little bit about the character, the new focus on character. Well, actually, I'll save that for part 2. That's what I'll save for part 2. I'll start with just some posters to show you just a few of the many that I made this summer. So this first poster, True Heroes, I have decided that I'm going to make the hero's journey the foundation of my classroom. This year I'll be teaching 4th through 8th grade. And I'm going to, I integrated patriotism with heroes, and my students are going to learn what it means to be idealistic, altruistic, resilient, empathetic, virtuous, humble, etc. They're going to learn what it is to be a true hero. They're going to read. There are 48 books that they're going to read. There are 48 books that they're going to read in this series called Christian Heroes Then and Now. This one is about John Newton, who wrote the hymn Amazing Grace. His story of how he was a slave trader. Oh, it's such a great story, and how he turned his life around and helped William Wilberforce stop the slave trade in England. So there are 47 more books, all on 4th, 5th grade reading level, that my students will eventually read as many as possible. So then they will set goals on what they need to do to be heroes. The hero focus will just absolutely be the foundation of my classroom, my character focus. Our first book that we're all going to read together, In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, maybe you've seen interviews of this woman. She escaped from North Korea. It's her story of when she was 13 years old, how she escaped from North Korea, from communism and oppression, and she's in America now, and she's an American citizen. It is an amazing story of heroism. So that all of us are going to read this story together and launch us out into this hero approach. And we're going to talk a lot about being brave and standing up and speaking out and doing what you need to do. Be brave, do something. To know what to do and not do it is cowardice. Heroes are brave. And so we will talk so much about how America needs, we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. And if we're not brave, America can't exist. We're at an apex right now where we have to stand up and speak the truth, or we will no longer exist as a country. I really like this one. Live the American dream. My students are going to learn what the American dream is. They're going to learn all about hard work and opportunity. And this poster is just one of my, I think I made 5 posters that have a patriotic focus. Absolutely, we have to teach our kids to love America. We have to teach them how lucky they are to be Americans. And this is just a really cute one I did based on Horton hatches the egg, how Horton meant what he said and he said what he meant, that he had integrity. People, heroes and people of character always have integrity. They always do what they say they're going to do. So I have lots of posters that have individual character traits, and that's one of them. Another one, another character trait is that people of character always tell the truth. So there's a book called Howard Wigglebottom and the Monkey on His Back. So this monkey on his back was his guilt because Howard lied all the time. And then finally at the end of the story, Howard tells the truth and the monkey runs away. It's a great story. So just another poster on truth and the importance of that you cannot be a person of character if you're a liar. You hear so much today about victimhood. This critical race theory is so much about oppressors and victims, and that if you're black or your color, you're not white, then you're a victim, and if you're white, you're guilty of being an oppressor. It's so much garbage. And so this one says God intended for us to have a victor mentality, not a victim mentality. And so I'm going to talk to my students all about what it is to be a victim or to overcome so that you're a victor. And now, this is my favorite quote of all time in the classroom. I've shown you this one in a video last year, but I made a brand new one. It's not about how smart you are, it's about how hard you're willing to work and the quality of your character. And so, my students are going to learn what the quality of your character means, what that's about, and why that's more important than if you're a straight A student. They're going to learn all about that. It's about whatever your best is. If you work hard and you have a high moral character, then you're a hero. And so I have lots more posters, but those are the only ones I'm going to show you today. This is where I'm on my way. These posters are they're just like an indication of where I'm going in my new assignment in this new Christian school. It's not about social emotional learning and all of the ideologies that are being infused into our students. We're going to have a pure meritocracy. My students are going to work hard. They're going to be challenged. They're not going to they're going to learn to respect themselves. And I'm almost speechless. I'm so excited about it. So in conclusion, I think you have an idea of, it's been a long road, 50 years. I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot. And I'm saying if you're a teacher in the public school system right now and you're not happy, you need to do what you can to get out. There are charter schools opening up. There are home schools. There are private schools. Maybe you need to move to Florida, the free state of Florida. But I could not stay in a government school another minute. I'm reminded of Helen Keller. Her motto is my motto. Her motto was, I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And what I can do and should do, by the grace of God, I will do. So I will do my part to teach my students to be people of honor and integrity and to love America and get us back on track. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to part 2.